All right. So I think we are live. Let me just double check to confirm. Yep, looks like we are live now. So again, welcome everyone. I know it has been a long time since we have had one of these live streams. Today is going to be really fun because we are, of course, nearing to an end to this year. We have been like our Devil team has been doing these live streams for a while. We started in September with using AI tools like Cursor AI for building a full fledged RAG based application with the help of Couchbase before we moved into the Hacktoberfest series. And of course, we promised everyone that we will also start or kick off a SaaS product building with the help of Couchbase. In fact, like we had our first ever live stream where a lot of folks were really impressed and wanted to be a part of that particular series as well. So that will be returning hopefully early next year. But today is just a fun comparison video that I just wanted to create that we wanted to kind of showcase. So if you're not already aware, and let me actually share my screen for this because this is fairly exciting news for someone who leverages. And let me ensure that I'm able to share the screen. Okay. So if you're not already aware that just day for yesterday, the GitHub team announced that now GitHub Copilot is free, which means that if you look at their plans and pricing, they have now a really generous free tier. So that can be used for up to 50 chat requests and 2000 completions. Earlier, you had to pay at least $10 a month for the GitHub Copilot, which of course was still technically free for folks who are either verified students or maintainers of open source projects. But now there is a free for all free tier available, and I think like it's pretty generous for someone who does some hobby development. But of course, people can still always go for some of the more enterprise focused options as well. And the reason why this is pretty huge is the fact that because till day for yesterday, GitHub Copilot was not free. So there were a bunch of different other code helpers or AI assisting tools that one could use. So of course, the biggest one that really made splashes across the entire tech fraternity was the Cursor.ai, which, if you're already not aware, it's essentially a fork of VS Code, but it comes with a bunch of different AI enabled features, including a chat interface. And it also gives you some amount of, I think it's 50 free chat requests that you can make. And by default, it has the Claude 3.5. So it became very popular for being able to just quickly prototype and build applications. In fact, we also leveraged Cursor.ai during this entire time when we built a bunch of projects and we used Cursor. But given that now we have GitHub Copilot free version, we wanted to see which one actually performs better. Now, there were a few other changes also that came to the GitHub Copilot, and another one being that now it supports many more models as compared to just using the proprietary OpenAI Azure models. Now you can pick and choose between OpenAI models and even some of the more fine-tuned models, including Claude 3.5. So it's no longer just dependent on that GPT 3.5 or GPT 4, which made it a bit outdated in comparison to some of the other alternatives that are there in the market. So today, what we're going to be doing is, without wasting much further time, we will see the GitHub Copilot free edition in action and compare it against Cursor.ai, which of course is one of the fan favorite for picking up the code editor of your choice. So I'll be showing how that comparison looks between VS Code and using the GitHub Copilot extension versus Cursor code editor and using the native inbuilt code chat that you can leverage. I also, and the way that we're going to be comparing between both of them is that we'll be building a quiz app powered by Couchbase. So you can have a list of pre-selected questions with the help of So we'll have a preset of questions, and then once we create the score, then we'll be able to save the score inside of Couchbase. So we'll ask both the Cursor and the GitHub Copilot free version to build that app for us, and then of course we'll try to run it and see and make adjustable changes to see how quickly can we prototype and build an application. Now, before also moving ahead, there's another particular tool that I'm also using these days quite a lot, which is called as Bolt, which is by the team behind StackBlitz. Now they released this particular tool again about a month and a half ago, where you can actually not only build an entire application, but you can also actually run it directly inside of your browser. So again, showing capabilities. So this was actually one of the prompts that I'll actually be using, which I was trying to use with bolt.new. And in fact, like I was able to get a project up and running in less than probably 15-20 minutes to quickly again show you what we expect to build with this particular application. So the main thing that we want to build, right, and this is the prompt that I'll actually be using. So it's going to be that we'll be building a React quiz app with a Node.js backend, because of course you need the Node.js backend because you cannot run Couchbase directly in the front end. So the front end would basically display the multiple choice questions. It will track the user scores and send it to our Couchbase database operations, where it will be storing the user's scores, and it will have API endpoints for not only saving the scores but also retrieving the leaderboard data. And of course, that means that we'll have a separate client side and a server side directory, and we should at least be able to handle basic error handling. And then we have just given some required features, because of course, the better prompt that you give to the AI models, the better it will be able to deliver the application. So that is why, like we have just mentioned, that it should be an express app with the API endpoints for the score management and database operations. And then we should have the example code for the components, the setup, and have include information for how you will be able to actually set up a project. So just to kind of see like what is the main comparisons of the features between GitHub Copilot versus Cursor AI, and then which one is more well suited for, let's say, React development. Because of course, as we know that ultimately the user experience is going to be different, because they do offer a lot of similar features as well, as we'll see, but they do have some distinct features at the same time. So I'll be using this particular prompt in order to build the actual application, and then I'll also show you how it compares against the bolt.new and the app that I built with the help of bolt.new. So without further ado, let's go ahead into the terminal itself. So I have already created these two separate repositories, blank repositories for now. One is the quiz cursor and quiz VS Code, and I'll open both of them separately in their respective code editors. So the first one is quiz VS Code, and so let me go ahead into quiz VS Code, and over here I'll just open up VS Code. Now, in terms of the developer experience, let me also go ahead and actually stop sharing my entire screen because I didn't show that. So let me share the entire screen over here. All right. So now you should be able to see. So I have basically two different directories. One is the quiz cursor and the other one is quiz VS Code. So the first one of that I opened is the VS Code one. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, if anyone has already given the free tier of GitHub Copilot a try, do let us know. I did give it a try when I was still a student, and it used to work well, but I never felt like paying the $10 for the VS Code. So that is why for the GitHub Copilot, that is why I started to use Cursor quite extensively because of the free tier that it gets with the chat. But now we have, of course, the free tier. And if, of course, if you want to just invoke it, it's very easy. You can just set up the GitHub Copilot, the free tier. You can just set it up. So as soon as you'll set it up, you'll be able to see that in fact there is a GitHub Copilot free tier version directly in the web, where you can actually ask it any type of question. You can choose between the different kind of AI models, including Claude 3.5. In fact, even the O1 model, which are powered by the Azure OpenAI, and you can ask it questions. So if you want to just directly use the GitHub Copilot inside of github.com, you can use that. But of course, they have extensions with available to you, where you can use it with any other code editor or IDE of your choice, whether it's JetBrains, VS Code, or even Neovim. And of course, there is one unique thing about the GitHub Copilot extensions, which is this extensions feature, where it extends your functionality by giving you a number of different tools that can directly interop with the GitHub Copilot. So, for instance, right now, our developer experience team is actually going to build an extension for the Couchbase with the GitHub Copilot, which will allow you to visualize all of your Couchbase collections and build RAG applications much easier in a much easier fashion as compared to like just directly using the GitHub Copilot. So of course these extensions provide better context to the LLMs that are being powered inside of GitHub Copilot, and there are already a lot of popular tools including like Docker, Stack Overflow, Gitbook. All of these are already available for you to use, so there will be a one coming soon for Couchbase as well, that's being developed right now. So it's very easy to just kind of get started. So once you have just signed up, I'll make sure to also share the link over here for everyone. So once you have signed up, it's very easy to get up and running. And with that in mind, of course, you can install it for VS Code as well. So I already have it installed for VS Code. Over here, I can just very easily go into the view and click on chat. So here, this will open up this particular chat window for GitHub Copilot. Now, some of the key things to kind of understand, and we'll also understand these features so that we can find out the key differences between Cursor and the GitHub Copilot free tier. So with the GitHub Copilot free tier, of course, you can ask it a question, hey, and it will generate a response. Pretty simple chat interface. But of course, GitHub Copilot does a really great job of autocomplete. So if you're writing some code actively inside of your IDE, it will give you some suggestions. Of course, that has been a feature that has been for the longest time now. But there are some neat features. For example, you can choose now between the different models. This is not supported earlier. But you can also add additional context for the GitHub Copilot. Now, whether it's getting answers from GitHub. So, for example, of course, as we know that all of these LLMs are not always trained with the latest data. So if you want it to do like a Bing search and it does not know something, or it has not on something that it has never been trained upon, or something that's new, it will be able to do a Bing search and find that additional metadata and enrich itself with that required metadata. For example, it could be a new version of Python or a new version of a particular library that you're using, but the response being generated from the LLM inside of the Copilot is using or referring to a previous version. So in that case, you can just leverage the GitHub. And then, of course, it has all of these different contexts that you can use. So you can give it context of the terminal if you want to, like, let's say, figure out, a bug that you have come across in your terminal. So you can give it access to that. I typically like to use the workspace because the workspace will be aware of your entire current VS Code, that you have opened up. So the workspace will be aware of the entire things that are happening within the current workspace. But you can always give it context of a single file, or the entire code base, and then you can also use some additional functions. For example, if you want to create a new test, like a unit test, you can do that. If you want it to explain a certain function, if you want it to start debugging some failure, right, there is also this help option that gives you much more context into how you can leverage all of these shortcuts and these mentions. So I typically try to use the workspace because it gives you the context of the entire code base, right? And then you can also actually attach some files, whether it's the code base, so you can attach those as attachments. And you can also actually, in fact, speak with it, right? You can start a voice chat. So, and the great thing about this, like at least for GitHub Copilot, is that even if you're not using English, you can probably speak in your native language. So for example, I speak Hindi, so I can say it, क्या आप हमारी help कर सकते हैं, which basically translates to can you help me out, and it should technically be able to respond to me, because oh, that's pretty unique. But I think like yeah, that's unique, because I was just looking at Twitter today, and there were some responses where it was able to respond in Hindi as well. But I hope that kind of gives an idea. So what I'll do is I will copy over that same prompt that I used instead of bolt.new, and see whether I'm able to get a good response from the GitHub Copilot. I will also just try to ensure that it does not mess up with the TS config, because sometimes I've seen that it messes up, especially if you're trying to work with JavaScript or TypeScript projects. It has a tendency to mess up with um, it has a tendency to basically mess up with the TS configuration. So you'll probably then have to spend a lot of time having to deal with unmatched dependencies. And that, of course, like managing those with TypeScript can sometimes be a nightmare. Most of our time might then just go into that. So let's just ensure that we can give it another prompt, which is ensure to use the latest dependencies for TypeScript and TS config uh, based on Node 18, because I'll be using Node 18, so Node version 18. So just giving it that additional prompt. And of course, now I can give it this entire prompt. So right now you see that my entire code repository is completely empty at the moment, but now it starts to determine the user intent, and it'll hopefully start to give us an entire end-to-end breakdown of how the project would look like. But on a rough scale, at least, what we can expect is to have in the server repository directory, we will have our main Express app, and then we'll have some methods to connect to the database. We'll have a couple of endpoints. One is to save the score, and one is to retrieve the latest scores, which will of course involve us to use a SQL plus query to fetch all of the latest results. And then we'll have some components. So we'll have some components for being able to manage our quiz and the questions and the scores. So it basically goes ahead and creates a proposed directory for us with the React Quiz app. And one of the great things about the GitHub Copilot, and at least with this particular version, is that it will actually go ahead and create the entire workspace for us. That means that unlike some of the other tools that you're using, where you have to then manually copy paste and basically create all of those files manually, it has already given us a good structure. So if you look at the structure right now, we have the client directory where we can see all of the components. We have some services, and then the types for our TypeScript, and then within server we have the database, and then we can also just quickly take a look at how the implementation has been done. So this at least looks like a fairly straightforward approach. So if we just quickly take a look at our app.typescript file, looks fairly decent. We can always, of course, go ahead and explore the code in more detail. So first, let's go ahead and create the workspace. So this will within this particular parent folder, and what this will do is that it will create all of these files that we have just set up, and all of these are being automatically being created by the GitHub Copilot, which is a great thing. Like if you want to just quickly bootstrap and kick off a project, and not have to manually then set up each and every project file, this is a great way for you to be able to do that. So while this is happening, I would like to also uh, have a separate project created with the help of Cursor, and then we'll try to set up and run both of them and see like what are the key differences. Because of course now that we have set up, you can see that all of the files have been created for us. We can ask it to also then provide us all of the information, because I had requested it to provide the information around, I think it was probably mentioned in this file over here. So we want to basically include the instructions on the project setup, so that, for example, now someone who might be new to JavaScript, they can um, be provided with all of the instructions for the project setup and running the application, and what are the required environment variables. So here it provides us the data. Oh, but for some reason it is giving us completely new values. Perhaps because I'm actually still relatively you know new to the workspace itself, but it does a good job of creating that workspace. But what I wanted to basically do was I wanted to get a response based on this particular repository. But one of the another things over here is that if you want to, like, let's say, edit multiple files, you can also just leverage this edit with Copilot, which is in a preview stage right now. So this allows you to start editing a set of different files which you want to work with, and you can ask Copilot to make changes with across multiple files. So you don't need to just rely on a single file. You can ask it to work with multiple files, and you can just set those over here, and it does a great job of being able to manage all of them across. Of course, this is much more of a generic response. Let me try to use the workspace and then ask the same questions, so that it is aware of the context that I'm actually asking it for the entire workspace, and not just like asking it a random question. So now I think it has given me a much more specific answer related to my workspace, which actually makes sense. So we'll try to test this out, but before that, I also wanted to quickly show you how that experience looks like in comparison in Cursor. So of course, if I go back to my terminal, I'll just go and now navigate into cd quiz cursor, and I'll use cursor dot to open up the cursor code editor. And this opens up the cursor code editor over here. Let's also open this up. And here, if you want to open up the native chat that's already built in right into Cursor, it's just a Command L if you're using Mac, and probably Control L if you're using some other tool. So here you'll see that we get that same kind of a UI. I'll just also open up a new terminal section. And here I will ask it the same question or the same prompt that I gave to the VS Code and the GitHub Copilot, and I'll ensure to just provide that same instruction at the top, which was ensure to use the latest dependencies for TypeScript, because sometimes it might mess up. So just to kind of quickly compare between Cursor and the GitHub Copilot. So of course, with Cursor's approach is that they are building a lot of um, AI features natively inside of their clone that they created with the help of VS Code. So it's not just the inbuilt chat, but they do offer a bunch of other native inbuilt AI features, including autocomplete, and then of course chat being a major feature. They also have a version or a new feature called as Compose, which is fairly similar to what is available with the edit with Copilot, which allows you to edit multiple files at the same time and get all of them accepted or rejected one by one. So that's another unique feature that has probably similarities with the Compose feature of Cursor. So right now, of course, I'm using a free version. You can see over here that with Cursor settings, you can choose between the different models, including Claude, Gemini, GPT, O1, and you can provide your own API keys for Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google, or even Azure OpenAI. You can see the list of the different features, including autocomplete if you want some prediction functionalities. And of course, the one that's Composer is anonymous to the edit with Copilot. So we'll use that similar experience over here, and I'll probably just go ahead and ask it the same question. Now, what you're seeing is that in both the cases, I'm going to be using the Claude 3.5 Sonnet model, which is available to us in both the cases. I think I might have used Claude. Yeah, I've used Claude only. So in both cases, we are using the Claude 3.5. And one of the key things you'll see over here is that at least in the case of Cursor, it's basically treating the entire user experience as it's not treating it like as a workspace, like we see it inside of the VS Code with the GitHub Copilot. So that means that all of the files that it has given us, so it gives us a good idea of how the project structure looks like, which means that we'll have to basically manually set up all of the different files that it has provided to us, in order to basically go ahead and run the application. And it gives us all of the installation steps in order to implement this particular code. So, having seen that, of course, now the immediate difference between them is that it's a lot easier to set up a new project if you're using GitHub Copilot just for the setting up. But we'll also see that how is it to actually use both of them when we're actually proactively building the code. But just kind of show you a key difference in terms of adding context. So when it comes to the cursor, you can add again context based on files. You can also, give it a docs. So for example, like I have given it multiple docs including Couchbase docs, so you can basically just provide like a new doc link, which might be for a new project or for a custom in-house project that you might be working with. So this is actually one nice feature that I really like. I have custom retrofitted my Cursor experience to have some of the most important docs that I typically work with. Like I'm doing a lot of mobile dev with Couchbase Lite, so I have already added my docs over there, and it automatically updates it. But you can also add like a Git repository, dedicated document, or you can also search the web. In this case, it's using some of the other APIs in order to search the web. Of course, with GitHub Copilot, it's going to be using the Bing to search the web for you. So that's the main difference between the user experience of using VS Code versus Cursor. So let's now actually start to implement and see how usable the code, right? Because of course, as we know that it being an AI tool, it can never be 100% correct. But let's actually try to see, because at least with the case of the GitHub Copilot, it already gave us the code structure and we have it already set up. So I'll just quickly also open up the terminal and start to just do some of the more basic things, which is setting up our environment and setting up the environment variables in both the cases. So in this case, it gives us the .env file, and we'll just put it across in both our quiz app and the client and the server. So let me go ahead and also add it over here. So I'll just create a .env file, and I'll create a similar .env file in our backend. Perfect. And then I'll just go ahead and replace these values. So I already have a database cluster set up. Of course, if anyone wants to set up their own, you can set up the free tier with Couchbase. So there's a generous free tier offering from Couchbase. So you can just set up a perpetually free tier that you can set up. You don't need to add any credit card details. So I'm using one. I'll just quickly show you the one that I'm using. I'll quickly just log in into my account with Google. So in this case, you can see that I've just set up my account and I'm using the free tier at the moment. And the particular, if I go to my database over here and data tools, I'll just quickly also show you the particular bucket that I'm going to be using for this particular demo. So I've already created a bucket by the name of quiz, and then I have the default scope and collection inside of my quiz bucket. So that's the one that I'm going to be using. So now I'll just set my values over here and replace them with the default .env that has been created for me, and replace these values. And also replace the username and the password. All right. And just in case if we need a let's see what is the, so inside of the config, we can take a look at what's the Couchbase bucket. So that's the username, and we might just have to change the environment variables. So you're going to be using the Couchbase bucket, which is going to be quiz, and I'll just also copy over these values over here. So we might just need to replace the name based on our environment variable set by the code. So this should be couchspace password, couchspace username, and finally couchspace string. So that should be good enough. And similarly, I think this should be also good. So that's the environment variables that we have set for our backend. So we can probably first go to our backend and see what were the instructions. Of course, we'll have to do the npm install and then, of course, run the server. So hopefully it should be able to connect to the server. So let me just go ahead and expand this a bit further. So first I'll just go into quiz app, into our server directory. For some weird reason, I have to use sudo for running any npm command. I've not been able to figure out what's the case with that, like what's the issue, why I need to do that, but I'll just have to use sudo npm install, put my password. Oh, I had caps lock on. All right, so let's just wait for it to. And while, of course, this is installing all of the dependencies, let's just take a look at the code that it has created. So the first file that we can probably see is this particular file with the connection to the database. So of course, that's fairly straightforward. It connects to Couchbase over here, and then looks out for our collection and the bucket. Then we have a controller file, which is a controller, and we can probably come back to this in a bit. So we have the first file, which is just simply our express file, which is going to be handling our APIs. All of the APIs have been mentioned over here, which are the scores and the leaderboard. And then we have controllers for these APIs. So the first one is saving the score. So in this case, we are going to be running the query insert into scores with the username score and the values. And then what we're going to be seeing is that when we want to fetch the leaderboard, we are going to be running the query select user ID score from an order by, right? And then we have, so we have looked at the routes, and then we just have some error handling code. So let's just wait for it to also do all of the npm install. In the meantime, we'll also go ahead and set up our front end. For that, I'll navigate back and go into our client, and again just do nvm use 18 and go ahead and do npm run with the sudo. So sudo npm install. All right, and looks like we have installed all of the dependencies, so we should be good to at least start our backend server. So we see some issue come up, which is in the error handler. So let's see. It gives us an issue of, oh, there are multiple issues. So the first one is unable to compile TypeScript. Of course, I probably had thought that coming, because that's typically an issue with what I've seen, at least with the GitHub Copilot responses, at least for the limited time that I've tried it out, that it will never ever probably be able to resolve, like, get the TypeScript definitions or the configuration correct in the first place. So let's try out this feature. Let's try to give access to the terminal and ask fix the terminal issues, fix the terminal errors that it's seeing. So let's see if it is able to get the error. Doesn't look like that it has specifically gotten that, but let's probably try to copy over all of this error log that we just got and see if we are able to. Okay, so Copilot, we can ask it to terminal inline chat, we can ask it to fix this error. So that's another feature where you can directly run it. Oh, doesn't work that well. We can probably give it the context of the entire workspace. So think probably at the start, we can give it context of the entire workspace to help us resolve this issue. Looks some sort of an issue related to this didn't really help. Okay, so I want to close this. I'm not entirely sure, but let's see. So the TypeScript errors was okay. So we didn't add the type for perfect. How can I remove this? That's where it's strange. Okay, so let's clear this out, and I'll just use this tool over here. So let's get our type for course added. Hopefully that should fix the issue. And then it also asks us to basically edit the error handler file and update it with the specific types that we have now defined, which makes sense to have the correct types. And then the app.ts to also have the correct import. So let's go over here and change the logic. Then just ensuring that all these dependencies are also there in our package.json file. So looks good, and we can probably now start the server. Well, again throws some sort of an issue. So in this case, it throws an issue regarding similar issue like last time, which is unable to compile TypeScript. Again, probably because of the types definition. What I can probably ask it to do is I'll copy over the same issue and ask it to resolve it. So again, workspace. So probably, hopefully, this should help out. But see, like that's the main thing I wanted to quickly show you, right? It's not just as quick as smooth of a ride where you just ask it a prompt and it generates an automatic response for you. It does take time, and that is why like we need to ensure that you are able to. So now, for example, it although it does seem to be exactly the same. I don't necessarily see a huge difference, but okay, let's probably update this logic and also update our database. All right. So in this case, we have added, and then we have our score controller. So let's go to our score controller, and specifically, we want to. So let's see. Did this stop or okay? The type conflicts. So we'll go ahead and copy this particular response. I think for some reason it just stopped. And again, so that's like one of the main issues, right? Appears to have just stopped. So I'll pause it and I'll probably ask it to regenerate because it just randomly stopped in between. We see that there are clearly some sort of issues that have come up with the approach shared by VS Code or the GitHub Copilot. Let's take a look at a similar approach that was shared by Cursor and see if we are able to get at least the basic things right? So if we look at the implementation, at least just for our server side, so it has created our database, and what we can do is that we can at least just apply just try to see if we are able to get at least the backend running in the case of Cursor. So let's go ahead and apply this and create all of these different files. So at least it does a good job of being able to at least do it one file at a time. I don't have to manually go ahead and create all of these files on my own. So we have the package.json, we have the tsconfig, and then we also apply the database file. And then let's look at the other ones. So we have the database, and then we have the types file. And hopefully like there should be a couple of other files. So we have the routes, and we'll apply this as well. And we'll finally apply the actual API service. So that should be the main server file, should be the last one. And then we can try to at least run this and see if this works. So we have our server directory created now. Looks like there are some issues. We'll probably just look at those. So I'll just do sudo npm. Okay, my bad. Go to our server, npm install. And while it is doing that, I'll also copy over the environment variable files that we created over here for our server. And I'll add that to our server file. And just want to cross check whether we are using the same environment variables. So it, of course, because it's generated differently, it will have different names. So let's just add those over here. Then couchbase username. That's fine. And then couchbase bucket. Okay, that's just bucket name, which is quiz. So we can just give it quiz. Okay, perfect. So this looks good. I'll save the environment variables, and if you just try to do sudo npm start. Oh. All right, let's see. It says that address is already in use in 5000. Let's try to change the port to 4000. So wherever we have used 5000, we'll use 4000. Okay, there doesn't appear to be any other. If I quickly just take a look at the server.ts file, so we are fetching the port, and it should now use 4000. If I go ahead and start this, hopefully, perfect. So it's actually connected to Couchbase. So you saw the difference, right? That for some reason, GitHub Copilot is GitHub Copilot is badly struggling with the types. And of course, I mean, it might be able to fix it in one or two iterations, but that just goes on to show you, right, that every single AI tool that you leverage will essentially serve you differently. And of course, the main experience of using them doesn't really change much. Probably I can ask it this question that I want to add it all of my files. So for example, if I would just want to add the server, perhaps, doesn't look like, but I just wanted to also quickly show you that same app that I built with the help of Bolt, and with just like a couple of small tweaks, it was able to give me like a correctly working code. So the prompt that I had given to it was right over here, and for that, let me go into bolt.new and show you. I'll just probably have to restart this. Let's go back into bolt.new and look at all the previous chats that we have. So I created this today itself before this particular live stream, and over here you can see that the kind of prompts that I gave was just help me create a simple quiz app. It so by default, like with bold.new, if it detects that you're trying to ask it to create an app with Couchbase, of course, because it uses web containers, right? So with web containers, you cannot run Couchbase directly because it's in a browser environment. So you cannot run a Couchbase in a headless environment at the moment. So because it has an integration with Superbase, it will just simply say that instead of using Couchbase, I'll just use Superbase. So with a few tweaks, it was able to give me. I just quickly, of course, ran that, and it gives you like a really nice preview as well. It gives you the look at all of the code. You can directly actually deploy this code as well if you want to netlify. You can connect it with Supabase, but you can also export it or open it in Stackblitz. So that's like one of the great things about, at least like when you're trying to prototype. Even if you look at like GitHub Copilot or the Cursor chat, they are meant while you're actively writing some code and trying to debug. As you saw that I was trying to do that while both trying to create a new project and set it up. But for example, like when I download this particular code that I created, made some tweaks, I have this server up and running, so I can quickly just show you that the code for running this. So if I go back over here, I'll go ahead and run both my front end and my back end. So if I go ahead and now run my localhost 5173, you can see that I have this over here. So let's try to run this quiz that it generated. So if you look at the code over here, at least so backend we have taken a look. If you take a look at the front end, we have the quiz component where we are building it with the React app. So we have a function to handle our submitting of our score, and then we have our entire component right over here. We display all of the questions in this JSON format with the IDs and the answers. So to make it like super simple, I didn't necessarily create like a dedicated. I could have also created a quiz question collection and an answer collection, but I didn't do that for now. I just made some sample questions with the responses, and then I have the API, which basically goes and requests to save the score and get the top scores for our leaderboard. And if you look at our main app.tsx, so that's simply like the basic code structure of our React app, fairly straightforward. And if you look at the actual service over here, you'll see the save score mechanism does a great thing about being aware that it's collection.insert, and then this is our query that we are running to fetch our the scores in the descending order. So now, if I go ahead and actually participate in this quiz, so of course, capital of France is Paris. I hope I don't get that wrong. Otherwise, my manager will be really unhappy. And then, which planet is known as the red planet? So that would be Mars. Largest mammal would be blue whale. Mona Lisa was by Leonardo da Vinci and is AU. So we got our 5 of 5. That's wonderful. And then I can give it a name as Couchbase live stream. And as soon as and let me also open up the inspect to show you that it's not just some magic, but it's actually working correctly. So when we save it, it saves it, and hopefully we should see the leaderboard as well. So you can see that we have all of these values. And if I go to Couchbase, to our quiz, and go to the section over here, if I click on get documents again, you can see that the latest one, which was Couchbase live stream, gets saved. So ultimately, like what I just wanted to quickly show you is that when you are prototyping applications, you have a bunch of different AI tools that you can leverage. I think I personally like bold.new because it not only creates a fairly decent UI. Of course, you can get that with VS Code, with the GitHub Copilot or Cursor as well. But I typically try to use tools like v0.dev, because this provides you this ready-made UI that you can import inside of your project. With Bolt, it's more of a backend. Technically, if it can execute it in directly in the browser with connecting to Superbase, you can do that. or if you provided perhaps the environment variables to the Couchbase connection, technically it can also try to execute that. But of course, not directly, because it does not support to run native like Node.js apps that require you to have a system process to run them. But yeah, that was a quick comparison. So a lot of people might be saying that, hey, is GitHub Copilot a killer or a cursor killer? I don't necessarily think. I think like both of them have their own benefits. I think cursor, as an ID, not an ID, but a code editor, has made a lot of improvements to the native VS Code experience, such that I actually stopped using VS Code and I primarily just work with Cursor, because their optimizations on my code, I think like they have just hit the sweet spot, and they have done. It's not just like a wrapper around OpenAI or Cursor or Claude. They have built in a lot of really cool approaches. But of course, you saw that with something like the GitHub Copilot. I really love the workspaces concept, because it makes it super easy to then prototype and start building your code. And I still certainly feel that when it comes to like autocomplete, if I, for example, want to create if I want to just do something like it's one of the fastest when it comes to doing the auto suggestions. But regardless of all of that, we know that you should never trust this code blindly, because as you saw with the VS Code, GitHub Copilot, it did not give us the right kind of responses as we would have wanted. So that is a quick overview of the new GitHub Copilot free tier. Feel free to sign up for it. Of course, it will be perpetually free, at least for now. And it's a fairly generous free tier. And in fact, like if you are, oh, this is the live GitHub error. So if you go to the plans section, oh, there is something wrong with GitHub right now. Wow, is that just happening with me? There's some sort of a server error happening. Is it for okay? That's fairly unique. Okay. Looks like there's some sort of a outage with GitHub at the moment. But yeah, that's like the main kind of experience. Okay, there is certainly something not working well with GitHub. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much is probably the stream telling us that it's an end. I hope that all of you enjoyed. Of course, again, a huge shout out if you haven't already started building applications with Couchbase. Now is the perfect time, because you can sign up for the free tier with Capella and build apps. If you want code assistance, you have bunch of different tools with you. If you don't like to build UI, you have V0, Bolt. If you just want a code helper, you have like tools like Cursor, or now the free GitHub Copilot. Do let us know, like do join our Discord and share with us what is your favorite AI assistance tool that you like to use. And we'll see all of you. Our devil team will also meet all of you after the winter break. So I hope that everyone who celebrates Christmas or celebrates the holidays has a wonderful time at the end of the year, and then we'll see all of you at the beginning of 2025. So thank you so much.